Hello, my name is Owen Halpin. I am part of the StableGrass Project, and the main aim of that project is to look at semi-natural grasslands and to see how the biodiversity and functional diversity influence grassland productivity and yield. So we're up in a site here in County Down and looking over Carlingford Bay, and this is an upland area. It's a grassland. It could be described as a GS3 grassland. So GS3 grassland is upland or humid acid grasslands. So it's an upland area. You can tell by all the heather and the heat that this area is quite acidic. So it's got a low pH. And so if we look at the species here, this area could be grazed a lot more than it is. And so an interesting thing about semi-natural grasslands is that there is a happy equilibrium somewhere between the undergrazing and overgrazing. So rewilding in its simplest form doesn't work here. So you do need some level of grazing, but if the grazing is too intense, it will also influence it. So you see that there's a lot of rank vegetation here. It's mainly grass species, and so you have a lot of this dense grass is Agrostis capillaris and Agrostis canina. So the grass species are hardier species, so they'll have a higher leaf dry matter content. So plants with higher leaf dry matter content, they have tougher leaves, and this is a sign that they're stress tolerant species, and so they're well adapted to stressful conditions like up here in a higher altitude. So we also have some flowering plant species. We have Gallium saxatile there. That's also a stress tolerant species. That's typical of GS3 grasslands. We also have some more generic grass species like Holcus lanatus here. That's found across most grasslands. And as you see, we have some sedge species here. These species, they look like grass, but they're not. They're in fact sedge species. They're a flowering plant. But if you hear this, they're very thick leaves, very hardy, and that's for the tough environment that they're in. How we go about studying these grasslands. So what I've set up here, this is what's known as a releve, and so it is the ecologist's job to look around the entire site and then pick one spot that they believe is representative of the vegetation across the entire site. So this is a 2 by 2 meter releve, and this area will be studied. All of the vegetation will be counted up. The abundance of each species will be counted. That's the first part. Then the second part, which is my part of the project, which is looking at plant traits, I will collect leaf samples from these species. So what I will do is, with the species abundances in hand, I collect every species that has more than 3% abundance. Everything below 3% abundance, we presume, has very little effect on the general ecosystem functioning. So every species with 3% abundance here is not a great number of species, because GS3 grasslands tend to be fairly species poor. So what I would do is, for each species, I'll collect 5 samples from each species. So if I collect 5 samples from the sedge here, and I will place them in Ziploc bags, I bring them back to the lab and I do my analysis. And what will that will tell us is, it will tell us what kind of strategy these plants have based on their environment. So my guess would be, based on the species here and where it is, you would have high leaf dry matter content, so they're very stress tolerant. You would generally have lower leaf areas, although in this area, because it's undergrazed, you might have higher leaf areas, and that indicates a competitive strategy in plant species. is a GS3 grassland. This is one of 3 types of grasslands that we study. So as I said, this is an upland grassland. It's a humid acid. It's a free draining soil, free draining mineral soils, usually lower pH. What we also have is we have GS1 grasslands, and they are dry calcareous grasslands. So they either occur in neutral or alkaline free draining soils. So our sites for them, they range from Leitrim, Roscommon to a site in Burren, County Clare. So they often occur on limestone pavement, very free draining sandy soils. The other is GS4 grasslands. They are wet grasslands. They're very common across the country. So they occur on soils that are often waterlogged or sometimes even flooded throughout the year. They tend to be very rich soils. And they can range, they have a very wide range of pH. So in terms of species richness, there's three sites, very species poor GS1 sites. They have very high species richness. They also have specialist species that can only thrive in calcareous habitats. So they are specialists on low pH, high pH soils. So those sites are the ones we've studied. We are hoping to find differences in species strategies throughout the different sites, and we may make another